You'll find as we get towards the end of the class, when I'm talking about things like how do you make a living at this stuff, that I don't do single sessions. I don't recommend any of you do single sessions. Okay? Those of you who are in the field already, think about your clients. Has anyone ever actually come in with just one problem? No. Yes? They had no other problems in their lives? Wow, cool. Turned into a testimonial. I now have no problems in my life. Okay? After a single session. The reason I go with multi-session programs is really very simple. Change takes place immediately. Becoming acclimated to the change and making your environment reflect the reality of that change sometimes takes time. And so we always stick with our clients for however long it takes until they know they've got to cement it in. It's just an unconscious part of their lifestyle. And along the way, we teach them self-hypnosis. We teach them how to improve their sex life, their golf game, whatever, while we're checking their progress on the reporting problem. And we've never had, I mean, not a single person in 15,000 hours, we haven't had a single person come back and say, I don't appreciate the extra work, or you're charging me too much money, or anything like that. Usually just the opposite. Usually people are thrilled and have more opportunities to sit in the chair. The hypnosis chair. Yes. Okay, anything else? Yeah.
Conditioning for pleasure.
Conditioning for pleasure. Yeah. That's actually on the agenda. I almost wrote conditioning for pleasure, because I'm from the American Midwest, where pleasure is regarded with deep suspicion. So is rapid change, by the way. Okay, yeah? Working with groups of people? That's groups at a time, right? You may see that happening in this very room. Yeah.
To get more of a handle on when kind of like sorting out the past is important as opposed to building new skill sets for the future.
I can't hear you.
To get more of an idea of how much needs to be done to resolve the past as opposed to building new skills for the future.
Okay. I have my own ideas about that, which can be summarized in fuck the past. Okay, but we'll get into it more technical detail. Is there anyone here offended by rough language?
I'm from New York, we don't do that there.
Okay. Another fucking liar. That's great. In the front row. My wife points out that about the only time I say fuck, for example, aside from trying to encourage people to do it, is when I'm teaching. It's one of these weird things, like some people drink, and when they drink, they smoke. You know, smoking at a time. When I'm teaching, I'm talking like a fucking longshoreman when I'm teaching professional classes. And maybe afterwards, I'm like Mr. Milquetoast. So. How much time to spend on the past as opposed to the forward leg? Actually, that's an interesting question because it gets kind of tricky because a lot of people come into you requesting change work. I mean, strictly speaking, they have a past, but for them the past is the present. That's why they're in the chair. Right? So, anyway. Yes, sir?
Strategies for difficult clients.
Difficult clients? There are no difficult clients. You need the hypnosis one. A lot of my methods have evolved because I have a very low boredom threshold, you know? So, I mean, especially dealing with people like smokers, okay? Smokers are the worst motivated people in the entire fucking planet. Why they've had like 40 years of written warning now, okay? Extreme social disapproval, and they're still smoking. So chances are they're not really motivated by things outside their own head. Right? And so you wrestle with these little fuckers over and over and over again, trying to get them to do the change that they actually said they wanted and they're paying for. And so I tend to develop very direct methods to keep myself entertained. Right? You can only do, well, those of you who are in the trade, I mean, it can get boring, right? I mean, it's the first time somebody comes in, when you first open your practice, oh my God, your first client sits in the chair, they are just amazingly fascinating. You know, human nature is so incredible, the complexity of the human mind. You know, they get about 100 clients, and you start to develop your own pattern and all this, and after you've had like 1,000 hours, you think that nobody has a unique problem. Nobody has a unique problem. Everyone comes in thinking they're the only person in the entire freaking world who has this mindset. And this is like the 8th time you've heard it today. Okay? So that's when you start developing things like hypnosis wand techniques. You know, just keep yourself amused while you pretend to be compassionate. You'll find oftentimes that difficult clients are people who don't understand or are unwilling to follow instructions. Right? You can always tell them things like, I get paid just as much to sit here and listen to you bullshit as to change your life forever. What do you want to do? Talk as long as you want. Somebody had their hand up. Yeah.
Rapid inductions.
Rapid inductions. Okay. We're going to do rapid, and we're also going to do instant inductions. Is that correct? Out of you professionals, is there anybody who still uses a progressive relaxation? Yeah? Use it a lot? Yeah. I don't use them anymore because it takes up so much time. Yeah. I prefer to have them. Well, I mean, the other advantage is if you use an instant induction, then shut up. Just a thought. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Calibration for suggestibility testing.
Calibration for suggestibility testing?
Yes, like you said once that you do the suggestibility testing to calculate what may or may not infect that person.
Okay. Yeah, we'll be doing that when I talk about suggestibility testing. My concept of suggestibility testing is a little bit different than most professionals in that I never stop. Okay, we do something real freaking dramatic to go, whoo, okay, I can be hypnotized, but then the real work comes later on. You been trained in NLP by any chance?
Not in a formal course, but I've studied NLP or courses and other instructors' courses and
Other instructors.
I don't remember the names.
That's right, you poor misguided fellow. Well, I'm asking because terms like calibration really only entered the popular vocabulary with NLP because they couldn't just say, pay attention or respond to the client. You know. People knock me because I hold hypnosis classes. They go, you know what, you can get 3 times as many in your class if you don't call it hypnosis. Of course, they comment on his courses because he knows a hell of a lot. But it was a very accurate marketing observation. Anybody here going to get crap about being a hypnotist or being interested in, I mean, crap is a negative term. Yeah. Come on, this means yes. This means don't call on me. Okay. Hand down means no. Yeah. I tell everybody I'm a hypnotist. And frankly, I don't get any bad reaction whatsoever. Usually people are fascinated. Usually people stop what they're doing, even risk their jobs in order to find out more about what I do. I'm convinced it's because I don't see anything wrong with being a hypnotist. I love being a hypnotist. I do it to everybody I come into contact with. Yes, sir.
We can get work in different states like ultra depth and
We probably won't work with ultra depth, only because it's impractical as an exercise because you can't accurately predict when they're going to emerge from ultra depth, which the exercise could take 10 minutes to 4 hours. But I'll be talking about them. Yeah.
Accelerated learning.
Accelerated learning. Start now. We will be talking about hyperimperia and experimenting with hyperimperia, which I use as the groundwork for accelerated learning. Yeah.
I know it sounds like a lot of people here are very experienced in
Yeah, I
this
know.
already.
I don't know, none of the basic guys are asking questions.
Yeah, and I have no idea who you are, what you're doing.
Who am Yeah, yes, okay. Yeah. We will in fact cover the basics in the basic class. So you can rest assured. Well, actually, it's an interesting point. For those of you who do have more experience than somebody who's walking in cold, I expect you to go ahead and do the exercises with beginner's mind, because I have found that even the most hardened, seasoned professionals benefit from reviewing the basics. And in fact, I do trance work on myself every day. And people think I'm doing some kind of, bizarre off-the-chart work, and that happens in the afternoons. But in the mornings, when I'm doing my basic training, I work only on basic technique. Only on basic technique, because basic technique is what's going to get you through the session. Right? Fancy stuff comes later. So those of you who have some experience or feel you have some experience, and there's a difference, go ahead and do the exercises, recapture your beginner's mind, and when you're working with your beginners as partners, and we will be switching off partners continually. We have 60 today? What do we have?
We
62?
have I think 62 now.
Okay. When we do the exercises, I'll be asking you to switch partners constantly. That's because I don't want you getting in a rut, don't want you anticipating somebody's style. I don't want you relying on one particular style. If you're going to be working with a variety of people, we may as well begin now. Be gentle with our beginners. Remember that when I assign an exercise, I want the exercise done pretty much the way I demo it. Okay, it's a real temptation for those of you who know more to go ahead and throw in all this cool stuff, and then your newbie partner is going, I can't remember all that. That wasn't part of the demo. What the hell am I supposed to be doing? Right? So it only messes up your partner. You got a responsibility to your partner. We're in the buddy system here. Hold hands across the street. No, okay. John.
My goal is to see a whole room full of people graduate at the end of Friday night with the best skills. I've been in lots of hypnosis certification courses where there's no hands-on. And Mark's one of the few classes I came out with hands-on skills. So if you just pay attention, do the exercises, you're going to be far more advanced than most of these people practicing 10 or 20 years out.
My class is pretty much the opposite of most classes in terms of what goes on inside the classroom. I will present all the standard material. Some things we left out, we chose to leave out of this class. Although it is the best class, you will not be hearing about the history of hypnosis. If you want to know about that, read a fucking book. Okay? Why waste time on that now? Yes, Anton Mesmer existed. Okay? You don't have to write it down. You can look it up. Okay? Instead, I mentioned this is a class about performance. It's a certification class, and it's the first certification class for the Society of Applied Hypnosis. And one of the guidelines, and I'm going to be asking John to talk about this later in the week so you can start to prep your thoughts here, is we started this new society because we're kind of sick of people who've taken hypnosis classes and can't do shit. Okay, so instead we just flipped the paradigm over and decided we're going to train people who can actually do a wide variety of things, do it reliably and confidently. What this means is if by the end of the week I have not seen you doing powerful, effective work, we're not going to certify you. Okay, you actually have to do it. Well, anybody bothered by this? Anyone too intimidated to raise their hand? If they raise their hand, they're cured. Okay? Cool. Anything else you need to have?
Could you define hyperperia, which you mentioned before?
Define hyperimperia?
Yeah.
Oh, I can do that right now. Is that okay? Okay. Hyperimperia is where you use trance to unlock the filters you normally place over sensory experience. So using hyperimperia, it incorporates time distortion, for example. It incorporates I always teach people hyperimperia on the way towards conditioning and pleasure, because you have to be able to actually feel things on command. Most people learn hyperimperia just to improve their sex life beyond their wildest imagination. To my mind, that's aiming low. You can use trance to experience anything that a human being can experience, and hyperimperia is basically the track within hypnosis where you learn how to either discard filters, sensory filters, or put them in place. We're going to be doing something related to that called hyperacuity, because there are a lot of you who think that, for example, right now you're awake. Right? It's not true. You're in the trance state that we call awake, but you are nowhere near operating at your full potential. However, using deep trance phenomena, we can in fact go in and demonstrate beyond a shadow of a doubt that there's a state of acuity beyond what we call awake. So we'll anchor this in while you're deep in trance. We're going to dispel that notion in a second, but then we put a trigger on it. Because I think hypnotic phenomena are not all that interesting when it happens during conventional trance work, because it's supposed to work then. But what if you were able to trigger any alleged deep trance phenomena when you're allegedly wide awake? And just have them at the same time, including having a hyperacuity switch, so when the chips are down and you actually have to be hitting on all cylinders, wide awake, paying attention. What if you had a trigger for that? Right? It's not a state that you can remain in. There's a reason that we walk around kind of zombie-like, because hyperacuity or full acuity is a tremendous draining state. It takes a lot of energy out of you. And if you try to stay in it, you basically go mad. So we don't recommend that. Okay? Unless you're in your client generation phase. I used to tell my basic students that if you can't figure out what's wrong with someone, give them something you can cure. But not everyone saw the humor. It's funny, and I'll say something that I think is, obviously a joke, and I see half the class is wording it. Yeah. The inside professional tricks. Okay, anything else?
So are we building that trigger we just talked about?
We can, yeah. And as you're going to find a lot of things work in the seminar room, work beautifully. Why? You're all self-selecting, right? You all volunteered to come to a hypnosis seminar. You've all invested, say a minimum of $1,000 to be here. Actually, it's probably closer to $2,000. The travel time, hotel costs, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, which gives you the emotional component. This is why I raise my clinical rates, is when people have a lot of money on the line, and when you work with me, you prepay, right? We give you a guarantee, but you prepay. We have every cent in our pocket before you sit down for the first session. Why? It's a tremendous motivator. You know they're going to show up. You know you're going to do the work, because a lot of my programs cost $1,500, $2,000. Okay, well, if they have to justify $2,000 on the credit card bill, chances are they're going to do the work. Right? So when we set things like the trigger for hyperacuity, it's going to work here. It's going to work like gangbusters here. Everything works in the seminar room. The trick is to build accessible triggers or anchors, so that when you leave and walk around the casino, up and down the strip, having dinner, whatever, or even worse, going home. Well, I mean, come on, where are all your bad anchors? Home, right? Your friends, your family, your furniture, right? Getting it to work there, that's the trick. And so you practice it here often enough so you believe it, so you think you've got it. Then you go home and put yourself in that state of belief. We're going to be talking quite a bit about belief systems, because you have to understand them to work with clients, but also you better have a good one. Otherwise, all you're going to do is imprint your shit on your clients, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many professionals I run across that, in a kind, compassionate, well-meaning manner, imprint their liabilities and all their personal disasters on their clients. We're going to talk about that a lot. I have a different philosophy. I think that the subject is in charge of the session, or whatever the hell they want. That's what they get. Yes, sir.
When you
said you stay in hyperacuity. What do you mean by going mad?
What causes you to go mad? Too much input. Okay, it's like being in a confusion induction all the time.
So they not know what reality is.
Eventually, yeah, within a time. And it varies from person to person depending on how strong a grip you have or how accustomed to that state you are.
But is there any way to go over the social construct or paths?
And stay there all the time?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of. I know a lot of people who try. I know a lot of flaky hypnotists too. Who here knows a flaky hypnotist? Yeah, okay, most of us do. If you're part of a professional association, I know you do. Okay. Anyway, anything else? Yes, sir.
How to actually apply these techniques to specific issues such as depression?
Depression. Oh, I hate talking about that. Yes, you are all straight men for a week. Okay. 3 pages of stuff, only one of which had to do with the basic class. That's what would be enough to get us started. Class, turn to page 1 of your books. We call this class the new curriculum because, as John mentioned, we are actually in full rebellion against what we would call the old style mainstream training that is basically rote learning. Okay? When I took my first basic class, it was a 6-month classroom scenario where we were practicing with each other, but 6 months. I mean, oh my God, I mean, how much explanation does sleep need? You know? But this is actually our dress rehearsal. Okay, this class will be taught at least 6 times next year. It's going to be taught here in North America, it's going to be taught in Asia, it's going to be taught in Europe. It's going to be a lot more expensive next year. Okay, but this is our test shot to make sure that we've got exactly what we want. And the purpose of this class is to take someone from flat out inexperience to becoming what I call adept. Adept means you're extremely facile with technique. You don't have to think about, what do I do next? You are comfortable with being a hypnotist. You're comfortable with working within trance. I'm not going to be talking about hypnosis so much, and we'll define it and talk about it then. But I prefer the term trance, and we'll get that in a second, because trance is kind of like the workshop. It's the workspace within which we affect change in our subjects. I want you to be adept to the point where you could leave this class, walk into any professional practice anywhere, and be prepared to intern. Now, the reason I say intern is no class will ever prepare you for the astonishing variety of fucked up people that come streaming through the door. Okay? No class will prepare you to work with people who just don't care about hypnosis. They just want their freaking problem solved. Right? Those of you professionals, I mean, do people come in clamoring to find out the technicalities of hypnosis? No. They just want to lose 40 pounds or stop smoking or improve their sex life or improve their grades or they want to run faster, play hockey better, whatever. They just want to work on the freaking problem. Right? So internship is where you discover the difference between working with highly motivated subjects like your seminar attendees as opposed to working with people who are just walking in off the street because they read your ad and they have new hope that their life can get better. Okay? Again, the emphasis is on performance. I really don't care what you think about things until after you have done the exercises. Right? Now, this could be because I have a military background. I doubt it. I actually, I'll just declare it's not. But military training methods have the advantage of something that has worked for thousands and thousands of years. That's why they use these techniques, right? And it's always shut up, do the exercise, and then, from an informed viewpoint, ask your question, right? We want you to actually do these things. Your full cooperation is required. That's what I was talking about earlier in terms of how I want you to, when you're working with a beginning hypnotist, and perhaps you are vastly experienced yourself, okay, I want you to, see, in real life, we always have to adjust our technique to the comprehension level of the client anyway, right? If you have a professional academic sitting down there, well, you can trot out all your big words. Okay, because they're going to understand what the hell you're talking about. Okay? If you have somebody who's a pipe fitter, and I got nothing against blue-collar workers, a lot of my friends are, because they're not as pretentious as my well-educated friends. But you adjust accordingly. So when you're working with a newbie, and perhaps you have a lot of experience, okay, I want you to adjust your language when you're being a hypnotist. I want you to adjust your responses when you are being the subject. So instead of anticipating and racing ahead, right? Those of you who know and love trance, how many of you are accustomed to going trance? As soon as the guy says, well, would you like to go into hypnosis? Right? Okay? Let them actually do inductions and respond appropriately so that they can get used to the idea of how the subject is going to respond. Okay? And open your mind to new experiences happening in here. Just because you're vastly experienced doesn't mean that you know everything or you've experienced everything. Now, for those of you who are beginners, you're going to find that hypnosis is an extremely sloppy, extremely forgiving state. When I outline technique and do a demonstration, prepare you to do the work yourself, you're going to find that I use different language every time I do the same technique. Partly because of my short attention span, okay? Mostly because I'm not paying attention to what I'm talking about. I'm actually paying attention to the subject at that point in time is spent. But it's also because you can say anything so long as you transition them through the correct state changes. Normally in a beginning class, you're taught that language is everything. All we do is talk to people. Language is incredibly important. To a certain extent, that's true. It's far more important, however, to understand what state changes does your subject have to go through in order to get the anticipated or desired result. And if you have those state changes clearly in mind, you can say anything. Anything. So long as you're going from state A to state B to state C. Okay? I did mention that this is part of the Society's curriculum track, and we may be able to talk later in the week about what does curriculum track mean. There are going to be more courses, and obviously it's a possible certification. Okay, what's possible with hypnosis? Anyone want to take a shot at it? Without reading the handy answers? This is why I hate handing out notes. Okay? People say, oh, well, it's permanent, positive, powerful change. That's it. What's possible with hypnosis? Yes, sir.
Anything's possible anyways. Anything that's possible anyways.
Okay. Richard?
Pretty much anything.
Pretty much anything. Okay. Hypnosis is how you all learn things anyway. Hypnosis is the learning mode we use to develop ourselves into full-fledged, fully functional human beings. So anything any human can learn, any other person can learn as well. Okay? I used to say anything a person can do, anyone else can do, until I had this guy who was like one of the last polio victims in North America. He raised his hand and said, well, I've always dreamt of being an Olympic sprinter. To which I replied, fuck you. You know? I mean, it's like, you can't overcome organic damage. Okay? I work with stroke victims, for example. And you work with building a different model of belief that assists the brain in rewiring areas so they can start to recover their motor skills and actually recover memories and things like that. But in terms of can you reverse organic damage, you're going to hear a lot of stories. For the purpose of this class, we're going to say no. Okay? We're We're sticking with beliefs, behaviors, emotions. But what does that leave? Any belief, any behavior, any emotion. You can either get it for the first time, you can get rid of anything, you can modify anything. It's like opening the hood and making whatever modifications you want. Hypnosis can be very, very rapid. In my experience, and like I say, we stopped counting at 15,000 clinical hours. There's just no point. Okay, the highest certification you can get in the field of hypnosis maxes out at 10,000 hours, so anything over that is just basically a marketing claim. We just stopped counting. But what I found is that the change usually happens instantly. And then, as I mentioned earlier, getting used to the change, walking it around, that's a little bit more problematic, because everyone in the world is instantly conspiring to put you right back in the same little box. Right? But rapid or instant change is easily accomplished using hypnosis. Yes?
Sometimes won't the environment revert you back to how you used to be?
Oh, yeah.
Anything done to change?
Which is why I always tell my clients, go home and do something drastic. Okay? I tell all my housewife, what?
Burn the sofa.
Burn the sofa. Yeah, that's a famous story, because when you think about, when you're working with depressed clients, okay, just to get hypothetical here, you work with depression, you're going to find that they have a favorite chair or a favorite place to sit at home. And that's where they've been sitting, where they've been depressed for the past 3 months, 6 months, 6 years. Right? So you do the world's best change work, and they are filled with hope, and they're just bubbling with energy, and they think life is just a frosted cupcake, and oh my God, this is fantastic. They go home, they sit on the fucking sofa, and it triggers years worth of depressed anchors, and lo and behold, they're depressed again. So I tell them, I mean, you can destroy that anchor. You don't actually have to burn the sofa, but it's like a very vivid image. Changing your furniture around in the room, however, breaks the anchors. Okay? But I tell them to go home and pay attention, for example, and see who in your life, when you come into contact them, leaves you feeling worse off than when you first met them. And then whoever it is, get rid of them. Now, I always get a call the next week, and oh my God, it's my mom. Yes, and the instruction was, and it's like, move to another state. You get along with your parents much better when they're 1,000 miles away. Reject your friends. Okay, get in their face. What is the change worth to your subject? If it's not enough to fight for, you probably didn't make the change vivid enough. Right? It's kind of hard to blame the client for these kinds of things. Right? When you give them a very vivid alternative, they're going, oh my God. Okay? I mean, if you're giving them a change so vivid, so powerful, so exciting, it's like someone is singing to their balls. Okay? Then they will go home and they'll act it out, and they'll fight to the death to defend it. Yes? Yes, sir?
Is that why you picked Las Vegas to have the seminar?
We try to pick places where it's unlikely we'll have a lot of local attendees. Do we have Las Vegas residents here? Okay. Yeah. It's why when we're teaching flat-out performance, overcoming all your performance barriers so that you can do anything with confidence, we take everybody to Bangkok, because I have a primarily North American or English-speaking audience. And so we take them someplace where everything you know is wrong, okay, and you can't help but be knocked badly off balance. Because, why? What's one of the critical parts of any induction? You know, is having them off balance. I didn't see that. What was that? Okay. Self-directed change. Most people go through life thinking that change comes from outside themselves. Circumstances are conspiring against them, so therefore circumstances must change. Right? People are out to get me. Someone is holding me back. The universe hates me. Okay? I mean, the universe talks to me, but usually it's telling me jokes. You know? Some people think the universe is telling them bad things, right? Because they're very other-directed. Whenever you work with a subject, you should be working round the clock to make sure they become self-directed, right? I tell all my clients that I love them to death, they're wonderful people, but it's my heart's desire that by the time we finish working together, I never see them again. Why? By the time I'm done with them, why would they ever need to see a hypnotist again? We teach them self-hypnosis, and I'm very, very open about the change work I'm doing. And I talk about it, about how this is what we just did, this is why it works, this is why it's going to work for you forever and all this, which is all the awakening suggestion part, but it's also literally true. If they understand how simple the process is, isn't it better to send them off to solve their own fucking problems instead of having to spend $150 an hour to go see a professional? You're never going to run out of clients. Right? Self-directed change. And as I say, beliefs, behaviors, and emotions are all open to suggestion and change. Can anybody think of something within beliefs, behaviors, or emotions that you can't access? This is a very pragmatic crowd. Usually I get some touchy-feely people start talking about birth trauma and all this kind of stuff. Wonderful. Whenever I find somebody who's talking about, I was traumatized in the womb, I say, who told you? Really? I mean, it's true, because they always say, well, I was watching Oprah, it's like they're accepting bad suggestions from the environment, or they read a book, okay? I mean, think about it. Have you ever gone into a bookstore and I'll get to you just a second. Have you ever gone to a bookstore and gone into the self-help section? Okay, now how many books are in the self-help section? Okay, well, if one of them worked, would they need the other 1,000? I mean, it's like, talk about self-selecting people, I love to go into bookstores to see where people go, Because I thoroughly enjoy things like you'll see the well-dressed professional women who have this pornography reflex when they walk into the romance aisle, They kind of look around, everybody looking, okay, go ahead, buy my software porn. But then I look at the people who are going into the self-help aisle because they're self-selecting, And I just imagine, I hallucinate all the time, so I imagine they have like a dweeb label over their head, Because people read these self-help books to just kind of, it gives them a shot of false hope that lasts for a month or 6 weeks, and they have to go buy another book. Right? Those of you who know people, I'm sure none of you would actually confess to it publicly here, but those of you who know people, I have a friend who buys self-help books. How many do they have? Did they buy one and actually throw themselves into it and really work the method and get ahead and get success? The chances are they got an entire shelf of them, right? Because they need that buzz, right? They're not generating hope. They're not generating positive activity on their own. They need to have just like a little more heroin. Okay? So they buy the book and they read through it and they pick up these terms: trauma in the womb, okay, or addictive personality. First time I heard about addictive personality, I thought that was so cool. I thought I can learn to make people love me. They're addicted to me. Oh, no, it turns out that's not what it was about. Although you should feel free to change the labels so you read through these books. Just make shit up, okay? It's like the guy who said, don't call it hypnosis, call it Una, and see how the world looks that way. When I did that, I went back and I bought one of these famous introduction to Una books and just said hypnosis every time it said Una. It worked. I mean, it's like, it made perfect sense. Just change one word, Una to hypnosis. So if you find yourself reading a self-help book, just change it. Make it work for you. Okay? What it's not. This caused a lot of hilarity before the class started. Because it turns out this is the list of what people actually wanted out of the class. Well, think about it. I mean, it's a basic class, so we're going to tell you the basic statement, which is no one can make you do anything. Okay, later on you find out that this is laughably untrue, but for the purpose of the basic class, now the thing is there are conditions applied to the exclusion. For example, if I have you in isolation for anywhere from 2 days to a week, yeah, I can get you to believe anything I want. That's true. I mean, think about the phrase, no one can make you do anything. Or I usually say do anything that you don't want to do. Right? Well, is there a huge loophole in that statement? What are the things you want to do? Are your desires open to influence? Yeah. They have these classic studies about they'll do things like they'll say, okay, they'll take two best friends, okay, and they'll hypnotize one of them, hand him a gun, and say, he's a burglar, shoot him. Okay, subject very rightly goes, oh, this is nonsense. Doesn't shoot him. You go, proof. We can't make you do this. And then, of course, you have basic training in the military, where they teach you to shoot anybody and feel good about it. Because it's like a day at the office, right? Given time, isolation from other influences, and specific indoctrination techniques, you can't get anybody to do anything. Jim Jones got how many thousand people? 900? To line up and drink what they knew was poison Kool-Aid. Okay? That's weird enough. When you think about how much time it takes to get 900 people to line up and drink the Kool-Aid, you realize that it took like half a day while people were dropping like flies in front of you and being hauled off by the guards to make room for you to get up and get your own cup of Kool-Aid? Okay, now what kind of conditioning is necessary to make that happen? Right? You can, in fact, get anybody to do anything. We try to focus on positive outcomes. Okay? But you ought to bear in mind that given tools of this scope, of this power, you probably ought to be real fucking careful about what you feel, what you say, and you do around someone who is in trance, whether you induced it or not. Because all this bit about how, I've had a lot of reputable, well-off therapists talk to me about how it didn't really matter whether they made mistakes, because after all, you can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do. Well, there's also a level of trust that a subject extends to the hypnotist. And that's what you want. You want them to basically be wide open to the possibility of change, following instructions, and then only later asking questions and all the rap I went through a minute ago. But it also means that there's an enormous responsibility placed on the hypnotist. So basically speaking, it is difficult but not impossible to get absolute control of another person. Okay? Which is why you read all these interesting stories about therapists going around the bend and therapists groping stories and therapy cults. Right? It's amazing how many therapy cults there are. They're very low key. They tend to be around 30 to 40 people. And it's therapists who get just a little carried away with the power that's afforded to you as a hypnotist, and they just turn themselves into little demigods. It's not a valid career path. We're not going to cover it. Hypnosis is not demonic possession. I live in the American Midwest, where you have an awful lot of, well, let me say first, living in the American Midwest is one of the most polite areas on the planet. Okay, salt of the earth, wonderful people. However, they tend to have these pretty strict religious views. Okay, and I can't tell you how many times I've had potential clients tell me they come in, they're all hopeful and all this, but they want reassurance that it's not demonic possession because that's what they were told in church. Okay, so just for the sake of argument, we will stipulate that it's not demonic possession. Okay, I can't make any statements about you in particular, like if you have demonic components.